Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Elise, and this is 10 to Life, where we talk everything true crime. So if you are brand new and stopping by for the first time, welcome. I hope you appreciate today's case coverage. It is going to be a tough one. And for all of my returning 10 to Lifers, welcome back. I'm happy to have you here with me today, and thank you for tuning in. You may be able to tell I'm a little bit more somber than usual today, and it's because we're talking about a case that I had been covering in the beginning of this year that now has some updates. Today's case is about 4-year-old Serenity McKinney. Serenity was first reported missing in early 2022, and I covered this case when it first broke, and I interviewed Serenity's father as well on my channel. Since then, there have been a lot of updates in this case, and updates regarding her father that I haven't publicly shared before. So today we are going to go over everything, all of the updates, and we're also going to review the backstory so that you're fully caught up if you are not familiar with this case, or in case you just need a refresher before we go into the new updates. I'm also going to play that interview for you with her father, because once we get into the updates about her father and about the details of this case, it's going to paint a much clearer picture as to what has been happening and some of the reasoning behind some certain things. So guys, let's get right into it.
10 to Life with Elise starts right now.
Serenity McKinney is a 4-year-old little girl who has been missing from Kentucky for quite some time. Catherine, also known as Abby, is Serenity's biological mother, and her boyfriend's name is Dakota. These two people are the last known people to have seen Serenity. Now, the last known sighting of Serenity by anybody else aside from Abby and Dakota was back in Christmas of 2020. And the last time that somebody spoke with Serenity or heard her voice was in June 2021. Serenity is described as a white, 4-year-old blonde little girl with blue eyes and a possible birthmark on her stomach. Abby became pregnant with Serenity when she was 16 years old. Now, when I spoke with Dave, Serenity's biological father, earlier, he says that he met Abby when she was 16 and he was 18. That at the time, Abby had lied to him and said she was 18, that he was first attracted to her because of how pure she seemed, in the sense that he said she had such a good heart, she wasn't involved in any drugs, he was kind of living a rougher lifestyle at the time, and he thinks that she was drawn to his bad boy image, but he said, that's what I was attracted to about her. She was so good. She was such a good person. But he also said that was the same reason why he didn't want to pursue a relationship with her, because he was worried that ultimately he would ruin her, so to speak, that she would just fold and do whatever he wanted her to do and kind of fold into this lifestyle that he was living at the time. And so in a backwards way, he wanted to almost protect Abby because he cared about her so much. Even though they weren't in a relationship, they ended up sleeping together, apparently just one time. And that was apparently all it took. And then she got pregnant with Serenity. After she found out she was pregnant and told Dave, he also found out that she wasn't 18 after all, that she was 16, and that she had lied to him about it. Now, this caused a lot of tension between the two families because of this age difference. But between the time when she found out she was pregnant and the time that she delivered Serenity, reportedly, they had an okay relationship, although not romantic and just friendly. They communicated, and things were all in all okay between the two of them, although the families had a lot of tension, and he says that at one point he thought that perhaps her family would even press charges against him because of the age, and that it kind of just became a little bit of a mess in that sense. So in August of 2017, Abby gives birth to Serenity, and at the time, Dave was actually in jail on, some previous charges of his. Well, the very next day, he was released from jail and was allowed to go to the hospital to meet Serenity. And he says that right when he laid eyes on her, he fell in love with her. He held her for 3 hours, and he was just absolutely over the moon. So over the next few years, Dave and Abby reportedly had an okay co-parenting relationship. He would see Serenity on average once a month. His mother and his grandmother also would see Serenity and also would speak with Abby, and his family was very involved. But because he was battling his own demons and his own addiction, he didn't see Serenity very often, and he wasn't as involved as his family was with Serenity. Although according to Dave, for the last 2 years, he has now been living a different lifestyle, and he has been sober with the exception of marijuana, and has pulled himself out of that crowd that he used to run with and some of the dangerous activity. So he's really cleaned up his life and got it on track for the most part. And he says that even when he wasn't seeing Serenity, his family often was. And they not only knew Abby, but they also knew Dakota. And you'll hear more of this in the interview when I play it. But he also says that his family told him about Dakota and never expressed any real concerns, said that he was, all around a pretty good guy. So he didn't have any concerns as to Serenity's well-being, any doubt that she was being well taken care of. He saw her occasionally, he spoke with Abby occasionally, and things seemed to be overall okay. According to Abby's mother, Abby not only had custody of Serenity from the day she was born, but apparently Abby's grandmother is the one who essentially raised Serenity from the very moment in which she left the hospital. Because at the time, Abby was still underage. She was just 16, remember, when she got pregnant. So her grandmother stepped in and really raised Serenity. She wanted Abby to finish school and to graduate, so Abby and Serenity moved in with her grandmother because Abby's mother was in the process of moving at the time, and her grandmother is the one who was the mother figure, so to speak, for Serenity, while Abby finished school, graduated, and then they would determine where to go from there. So a few years pass, and Abby meets this new guy, Dakota, in early 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. And around May of 2020, Abby decided that she no longer wanted to live with her grandmother. She wanted to move in with her biological father and her stepmother. Now, this at first struck her mom as a little bit unsettling because, remember, her grandmother had been taking such great care of Serenity. She was the one providing for both Abby and Serenity. So for her to just up and move into a different environment, she wanted to make sure that, of course, Serenity's well-being was still put as the priority and that she would still have access to all of these things that she was getting at her grandmother's house. Now, it's suspected that the reason Abby wanted to move was because apparently her grandmother didn't approve of Dakota. And this meant that Dakota couldn't come to the house, that she didn't approve of the relationship. So Abby said, well, then I can't live here anymore. I'm going to live somewhere else. And it's also alleged that Dakota was pressuring Abby to move out of that house so that they could continue this relationship. But again, Abby had no real income. She wasn't receiving child support. She had no real childcare options or way to pay for childcare, so her grandmother had been helping her this whole time. So Abby's mom said, as long as your dad and your stepmom are willing to step up and help you get on your feet and take care of Serenity and do everything that your grandmother was doing, that would be fine and it would be a step in the right direction. But then Abby reportedly said to her mother, well, I have to ask Dakota. Now, this immediately struck a nerve with Abby's mom, apparently, because she says that she knew at that point that Dakota was basically the decision maker, and as she suspected, was probably also very controlling. She had told Abby that she didn't need to clear anything with Dakota because she didn't have any reason to answer to him, and that ultimately she needed to stand on her own 2 feet before she ever could or would want to depend on a man or have a man, help make decisions or do anything like that. She said, he has nothing to do with this. Make this decision for yourself. But ultimately, Abby decided to move out of her grandmother's house, and she moved in with her father and her stepmom, and she took Serenity with her. Fast forward to a little while later, and the date on this is still pretty unclear. So if you know concrete proof of this, please let me know in the comments. But a short while later, apparently, Dakota told Abby that he was going to break up with her unless she moved out of her father's house and moved in with him. So she decided that she was going to move in with him. And Abby's dad and stepmom tried to talk Abby out of this, saying that it wasn't a good idea for her to move in with Dakota. And everybody at this point, it appears, had been starting to notice his control issues, except Abby. Abby either didn't notice or she made excuses for them. But there was a lot of concern about her moving in with Dakota. But she decided ultimately to stick by him. So she moved out from her dad's house. And at that point forward, Serenity and Abby lived with Dakota. Approximately January of 2021 to June of 2021, Abby spoke with her mother very, very rarely. When they did speak, it was just giving brief updates about how they were all doing, and her mother would ask Abby to see both her and Serenity, and there was always an excuse, apparently. Abby would always come up with an excuse as to why she couldn't come and see them, just slowly becoming more and more distant and gradually pulling away. And by June, she had cut off all communication with her mother. And this was around the same time that last person had ever heard Serenity's voice. It's unclear where Abby, Serenity, and Dakota were living at the time, but in June of 2021, Serenity's voice was heard by Abby's father via a phone call. Now, this is a key milestone in this case because Abby and Dakota apparently moved in with friends just 1 month later in July of 2021, and Serenity was not with them. So based on this timeline, Serenity must have gone missing between June of 2021 and July of 2021. The family began making calls to CPS and asking for welfare checks because they were ultimately worried about Serenity's well-being. Nobody had seen her at this point in several months. Nobody was talking to her, and that appears to be where the communication was cut off between Abby and everybody else. And every time that CPS got into contact with Abby, they would say that Serenity was with her grandparents. But then by the time CPS would come back for the follow-up visit, they would have already moved. And the case was then ultimately closed despite never having made physical contact with Serenity. Now, tell me how that happens. How do you close a case when you are checking on the welfare of a child without ever getting your eyes on the child? One more example of this broken ass system. So at some point, Abby and Dakota ended up homeless, and there were still no signs of Serenity being with them. A few months went by, and in October 2021, Abby's sister says that she messaged Abby on Instagram. However, Abby said that she was really busy, she missed her sister, she missed her niece, I believe it was, but that she was also mad at her mom at the time. And the reason it's alleged that she was mad at her mom is because her mom had called in a couple of those welfare checks, and ultimately Abby ended up blocking her because she was angry at her over this, which, why would you be angry? She's just trying to check on her daughter and her granddaughter. So Abby and Dakota were mostly living out of their cars, but they would crash on friends' couches from time to time, and a few of those friends have spoken out, and they've said that every single time they crashed with them, they said that Serenity was with her grandparents because they were homeless, and that Serenity was never with them. So after still not hearing from Serenity or seeing Serenity, the family decides to take action. Ultimately, Abby's mother and stepfather decided to file a missing persons report on Serenity. And when the investigation started into Serenity's whereabouts, Abby invoked her Fifth Amendment right and refused to speak. A few days later, on February 3rd, the state of Kentucky was granted legal custody of Serenity. And that's also when the authorities announced that the family, particularly Abby, was not cooperating with the investigation. On February 6th, Abby and Dakota fled to Kansas, and they were arrested in Kansas, in Thomas County. And when Abby was arrested, she was served with custody papers. Serenity was not with Abby and Dakota, and when she refused to cooperate and share information with the police, ultimately she and Dakota were arrested on custodial interference. They now are in Kansas waiting to be extradited back to Kentucky. Since all of this happened, this case has been all over the media. Everybody's talking about it, and everybody wants to know where Serenity is. Why hasn't anybody seen her? Why hasn't anybody heard from her? So let me play that interview for you. All right, so thank you so much for joining me today, David. I'm excited to kind of hear your perspective on everything. I know there's been a lot of rumors going around, a lot of speculation, and you, obviously, as Serenity's father, know what the reality of the situation is. And so I feel like you'll be able to provide a lot of insight as to so many of these questions that are on the top of everybody's mind. But before we get into the questions that I have and that I know some other people have, can you just kind of ground us with, I know there's been a lot of rumors about you, about your past, your background, some things that are a little concerning. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Um, well, for past 7 years, I believe, to like yeah, 7 years exactly. Um, I was living in Louisville, and I was just going through a lifestyle or a phase in my life where I was lost in a way, I guess you can say, and living that kind of lifestyle that I was living, I really kept in touch. I tried to keep as much like contact and pay as much attention and have my daughter involved in my life as much as I possibly could without breaking the extent of like her being involved to the point where somebody in the lifestyle that I was living like found out or there was any type of somebody wanting revenge on me type stuff. I made sure that that at no point in at any moment in my life would like any of the blowback from living that lifestyle land at my family's doorstep or my loved one's doorstep. And I mean, a little like I can't speak on, like I said, I can't speak as much as the record part goes for Dakota. The only thing I can speak on is the fact that there's a difference between, I guess, being a criminal and actually still being human and having fatherly instincts. Not only that, but knowing how to actually treat a woman and live life like a man and not have to resort to really exploiting any weakness that he has found in any of his past girlfriends or relationships lives. And yeah, that's the big key difference that I wanted to point out there. And some of the things that I was doing in my lifestyle, yes, it was drug addiction. I will go as much detail as that.
Okay.
um And as a matter of fact, I'll bring up one other thing. Last year I ended up catching a new charge, possession of a handgun by a convicted felon. I'll go into detail about this one because of the exact nature of that. Um, it was exactly when all the Breonna Taylor incidents were happening in Louisville, Kentucky, and all the looting and all the rioting and everything started happening. And I had just gotten out of jail after serving out, finally done with probation and everything. And then all this stuff pops off in Louisville to the point where they got the National Guard, everybody coming in, and I mean, really like shooting beanbags at people who were out past curfew with their shotgun that they usually use in like riot controls in prisons. And like I said, there was also some, like citizens, like random civilians, looting and like just going absolutely insane. I've never lived in a hostile environment to that extent in my life up to that point. So yeah, I did go out, and I know, granted, I shouldn't have done it. There's no excuse, but at the same time, I value my life and I value like the future that I have planned for myself at that moment. And so I went out and purchased a pistol, and unfortunately for me, had a bump in with police later on in that going week, and they found it on me, and as a result of that, I got arrested.
Can you elaborate on what your bump in with the police was over?
It was I fell asleep. I ended up falling asleep at the wrong place, wrong time, and I literally somebody who was like a best friend to me took me to the Shelbyville Walmart and parked the car, went inside of the Shelbyville Walmart, and called the police on me.
They drove you to the Walmart and called the police on you.
Yeah, because I fell asleep. I fell asleep in a vehicle. I was outside, and I just really it wasn't a moment where I just wanted to be left alone because I was majorly depressed at that phase of my life, and so I just went out to the car and fell asleep and woke up with a bunch of cops surrounding me. And I knew then and there, like I knew then, like it had to have been the person I considered like a brother to me that went inside and told these cops that I probably had a like gun and drugs on me, because at that point that would have been looked at federally. So I guess he was trying to use that as like a, I guess, I don't know, a bonus for him or whatever like snitches do. I don't know.
Do you think he was
Um,
trying to hurt you, or do you think he was trying to help you?
he definitely wasn't trying to help me because he knew the reason why I had that gun in the first place, and it was literally for safety reasons. Like, I mean, you got a whole city going crazy and insane. Like, I've never seen a city operate like that before in my life. I've never been in that kind of like hostile, like I said, that hostile of an environment where people are literally like, I mean, they broke windows at the downtown in the city courthouse. They smashed out windows. They literally trashed downtown area. Like, they trashed a whole bunch of stores. Like I said, they were looting. And I mean, I could literally get on my Facebook, and I can tell you right now, when I hopped on my newsfeed at that point in time, like, I could see like everybody coordinating where to go to so that they can like make it have like another wave of people like hit that spot. And I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just a bunch of violence going on at that time in the city, and I was in fear for my life, man. Like,
And
I
I
don't
mean,
know how.
I totally get it. And that doesn't necessarily, I feel like that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Serenity and,
No,
what's
that
going on right now. But I appreciate you taking the time to explain that, just because I know that there are a lot of people who have questions about it. And I don't know that you want to elaborate too much on it, and I don't want to push, but when you keep referencing back to the lifestyle that you had and the drug use and things like that, was there anybody who you did make enemies with that potentially could have wanted to retaliate on you and get to you by
no,
going through Serenity?
no, like, um, when you live that lifestyle, I'm sure that other people on here are addicts that have recovered from a hopeless state of mind. Like, they can agree with me when I say this. Living that lifestyle, you come across so many faces. And fortunately for me, I can sit here and I can comfortably say that, like, there is nothing that I have done that I could have done to anybody that would cause somebody to retaliate in this manner.
Okay. And how long have you been out of that lifestyle?
Going on 2 years now.
That's great. And so have you been sober for those full 2 years as well?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been completely sober. I'm not, like, right now. I deal with post traumatic stress disorder, like complex PTSD, as is. And when I moved to Florida, I wasn't aware that they had medical marijuana licensing. So that's literally like the only thing that I do. Like, that's all. That's it. I put down anything. I haven't done anything hard in that manner in almost 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so you aside from the marijuana use, which I feel like is so common out there, really,
Yeah.
you've been out of that lifestyle for about 2 years.
Yes, ma'am. That's the main reason why I haven't come back to Kentucky. Even I haven't come back to Kentucky because I moved out of that environment for a reason. And that was
That's
actually the
great.
last time I ever even got to see my daughter, like, face to face, was right before I left for California.
And
My
do you remember the
grandparents.
date that was
That was right after Christmas.
of
2 years.
2020?
Yeah, and I I had planned on going out to California because I knew, like, living in the city that I was in, Louisville, Kentucky. I knew living in the city I was never going to be able to, like, have a chance at even, like, giving myself a fair shot at making it in recovery, or
Mhm.
recovery at all for that matter.
That's really good for
So
you. That takes a lot to remove yourself from a situation like that and remove yourself from the temptations out there.
so like the main thing that popped up in my mind was like, okay, what better spot to go to than California, especially when given the opportunity to go. Granted, I was in a relationship at the time, and only because of her, like, really because of her insurance, we even got to go out there and partake in that, and, like, be able to escape from the hellish living lifestyle that we were in.
Mhm.
Because there
Well,
wasn't a single day, that went by that it just wasn't a daily struggle to survive, if you know what I mean. Because, like I
mhm.
said, for the past 7 years, I was up there pretty much all by my damn self, having to live up there by myself because my immediate family moved down here to Florida, and I had nobody to rely on up there. So, like, I thank God that I'm just even here today. And I hate how, like, the last time, like, because I even remember a picture perfect, clear as day. I even remember my baby mama sat on the left side, and my daughter sat on the right side in the back seat of the car that my grandparents showed up in that day at the motel when they came to see me. Because I remember the smile that went across her face as soon as she seen me. Anytime Serenity was put in front of me, she knew exactly who Daddy is.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime I'm glad that one of my family members was able to catch her on camera. But one of the pictures I sent to you when we're sitting down eating, and I just reach out my hand. That little girl would not ever let go of my hand,
Hmm.
and
Well, I think that actually is a perfect segue into what I want to ask you here is now that you've kind of set the record straight about your past and, the lifestyle that you had lived, because there were so many questions, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what's going on with Serenity and with Abby. And can you just kind of walk us through, when did you first meet Abby? How did you guys get together? What kind of person was she? Can you just walk us through all of that?
I can touch on it a little bit.
Okay.
The relationship with me and Abby was kind of was what I thought was okay at first, because like I said, I wasn't living the best of lifestyles, and she was attracted to that bad boy kind of attitude, if you know what I mean.
Was she an
And I
addict?
get No, she wasn't. That's the thing. That's the main thing that I actually liked about her, is that she despised any and everything to do with drugs. Like, but she had a weakness for bad boys, I guess. Like, that's the only way I can put it into words. And she lied at first. She honestly lied to me about her age, and that honestly took me for a surprise when that happened. And then on top of that, whenever I found out she was telling me that she was pregnant, I was like automatically quick to believe, okay, that's bull crap. Like, I mean, we only got together one time, because after that one time, like, I found out about her age, and then I was like, okay, not
How old
happening
was
no
she?
more. She was 16 at the time, and I was 18.
And how old did she say she was?
She said she was 18.
Okay. And then you said you guys only got together once and then she got pregnant.
Yeah, that was it. One time.
Wow. Okay.
But
And
there was a gift that came out of that, though. I don't want nobody to mistake that. Like, even though it was a young age to have a child, that's that's still a gift from God that you never take for granted. You're not ever like, she's innocent. You know what I mean?
absolutely. So what went wrong? Why did you and Abby break up? Was it because of the age thing? She was now
because of the
pregnant.
be, because of this reason exactly right here, because I knew exactly what kind of woman she is, and I knew exactly what her weaknesses was, and like the mental standpoint, like I knew exactly, like, if me and her would have gotten into a relationship, ultimately that would have ended in utter failure. I knew it would have, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because I'm not the type, like, I don't know, like, if I have a point to make, I'm gonna make it. You know what I mean? And it may come off as aggressive to some people, but I just like to make sure that I'm very upfront about how I feel about things.
So
And me
were
being
you and
that
Abby
way,
ever in a relationship?
no,
Okay, you weren't. You weren't ever in a
no,
relationship.
no,
Got
ma'am.
it. This was something that happened casually and then she got pregnant.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I appreciate you clarifying that. So then, I guess just kind of walk us through then. So she finds out she's pregnant. You don't pursue a relationship, not only because of her age, but because you say you know what kind of woman she is and that it would be detrimental. So then, what happens when she gives birth to Serenity? What's the situation at that point?
At that moment in time, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was sitting in jail on the day that she was born, so I wasn't able to be there during the birth. But I went to court that following morning, and the judge released me to go see my daughter immediately. And so that was the first place that I went, is to the hospital to go see my daughter. And I sat there, and as soon as I seen her, I didn't let her go for a good 3 hours.
So then you're with her for 3 hours. You're obviously falling in love with this amazing, beautiful little
Yeah,
baby girl. Tell us a little bit about Serenity.
Serenity. She's the sweetest baby. She was the sweetest baby ever. But if she had a problem with you, she definitely let you know about it. That was actually in another one of the photos that I sent to you. She always had like a little mean mug that she give people. Like, if she don't like you, she gonna mean mug the crap out of you. Like, and I love that about her. I love that little mean mug. Like, I was like, oh my gosh. Plus, not only that, like, she's literally like my exact, yeah. And by the way, the birthday is August 9th.
Okay.
But yeah, there is no, like, that is my twin. That's all. That's the only word I can use to like put that in perspective for you. Is like that is my exact twin. There ain't no way anybody can tell me that it's not. As soon as I seen that baby, I was like, "Yep," and like I fell in love immediately because I mean that's me made all over. That's me having like a. I want to give her like immediately. I wanted to just give her the whole world and everything in it, but.
Mm-hmm. And how often were you seeing her at that point? What was the relationship like between you and Abby? What was visitation like?
It was really rocky at first because relations between her family and my family were in high tension just based off of the fact that I mean the age thing right out the gate. We were honestly scared that some retaliation might have been made to where they would have pressed charges on me at first. So I was really walking on eggshells through the whole first 2 years.
Okay. And so how often would you say that you saw or spoke with Serenity?
Every chance I got, I'd say at least at that point in time, at least once a month. I
Okay. For
tried I
talking or
tried
seeing?
actually seeing.
Okay. And would Abby give you updates of how she was doing, or was she
At
very...
that time, yeah, she was very she's very communicative as much as she could be, and I appreciate it. That's why all this that's going on right now is throwing me for a complete surprise because like this is by no means the person I knew Abby to be.
So then from 2017, so August 2017, Serenity's born. For the next 2 to 3 years until you saw her the final time around Christmas of 2020, were things pretty good with Abby during that entire stretch? And you would talk to Serenity or see her once a month and things were okay? Or did that shift even sooner?
The chemistry between us was okay. Was like I said, okay between me and Abby. Okay, and but I wasn't aware like her true intentions on being that sweet to me, if you know what I mean. Because later to find out, the only reason why she was doing that and being so cooperative, I guess, is because she thought that she actually had a shot at a relationship with me,
Oh, okay.
and like that I know that hurt her whenever like she finally realized like it wasn't going to happen because I'm adamant about that. Because like I said, I'm not. Why would I get into a relationship with a woman who would just be basically agreeing with me based off the fact that she's pretty much intimidated by the way my voice level is. You know what I mean? Like I knew that was she can't handle any type of aggression or any type of like thing that comes off as aggressive.
So
She
are
can't
you,
handle it.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So the thing that drew you into Abby initially and what made you like her when you assumed she was older than, or she told you she was older than 16 at the time, was that she
Is
was
that
a good girl, seemed
yeah?
great, but then that was also your biggest concern because then she would just become
Because
basically
she wasn't
complicit with
exposed.
anything.
Yeah, she wasn't. She had growing up in her lifestyle or her life. She wasn't exactly exposed to any of the like exact like low levels a human being could go to. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was sheltered from a lot of stuff. And like me, on the other hand, like I got a good taste of reality and what it was a long time ago, and over and over and over again. And like I said, you in that life that I was living, you meet a lot of people and you pick up on how like people are built and how people operate and just pretty much have a sixth sense in a way. I don't know how else to explain it because like it's really honestly like that alone is a curse and a blessing in itself because like as much as you don't want to acknowledge certain aspects about somebody, if you don't acknowledge them, it'll ultimately hurt you in the long run because you know that what's happened in the past to you will happen again because you've already seen this type of person before. If that makes any sense, like
So would you say that part of you was trying to almost protect Abby?
yeah, for
Okay.
sure, yeah. Because if she
Okay.
would, if she would have been with me at any point throughout the life, like my lifestyle on a day to day basis, that woman, I know that girl would have been in absolute hell because she wouldn't even know how to talk to the people that I hung around with, for real.
So then when did things begin shifting with Abby? Like, do you remember the year? Do you remember around what time? Because you saw Serenity last around Christmas
Every
2020.
everything started going downhill at the same time, like as the dates listed. Like everything, even when she started dating Dakota, she still kept in contact with me.
And she started dating
But
Dakota in the beginning of 2020, correct? Okay,
and
and
like
the relationship was still good at that
yeah,
point.
and I'd ask about him a lot, because I want to know. Of course, I want to know what kind of guy is being around my daughter, and like I'd ask about him a lot.
Uh-oh, I think. Oh,
I'd
there we go.
always get told that he's a good individual, and there would be like my grandparents and my parents that they say that they never got the wrong impression from him, and so even though
Did
I never
you
got to
ever
talk to
meet
him
Dakota?
personally, I was comfortable based off of just that because I thought that like there was enough intuition to be able to judge whether or not my daughter would be safe around an individual. But I guess not, and I don't mean to say that in no rude way towards them or at all, because I mean I know how conniving people can be. But I just like want to express this, like when as soon as she stopped having contact with me, and as soon as she stopped having contact with my grandma, as soon as she stopped, like really, as soon as I first heard about any of this going on, I had a gut feeling that something was wrong, and I said that we needed to do something about it because it wasn't right, and it wasn't Abby, because it's definitely not Abby to just cut all ties with somebody who's been taking care of her and my daughter for the past 3 years religiously, just to drop her all of a sudden like that. I knew that out of nowhere was immediately a red flag. So I was like, dude, if anybody checked on her like at all? And so they finally go up there and missing persons report, and the ball gets set in action. But this ball should have been set in action months ago, and that not only based off of that fact, but also the fact that CPS failed to do what they're legally demanded to do in their field of study, which is to make contact, physical, actual contact before closing a damn case. And
Mm-hmm.
sorry to use damn right there, but I just think
It's
that's
okay.
actually absolutely ridiculous how they did that, because they go and they check on my daughter, they think everything's fine, but then they do the follow up. And then when they do the follow up, they don't make any physical or actual contact with my daughter or Abby, but they go ahead and close the case.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask is just if we kind of circle back, you said that you had never personally spoken to Dakota or met Dakota, correct?
No, and
Okay.
I really wish I would have made that an initiative looking back on it. But just based off of like my family's whole aura about him and how they presented him to me, like through their words, it just gave him a good picture. And on top of that, like I mean, I still did my homework as best as I could on the dude, like on my end, like through what I was like through my friends and my network of people. And the only thing that I knew really about him or anybody had heard about him is that he's like maybe got a few mental health issues. That was the only thing that I got out of it. I never once heard that what kind of individual he was when it comes to relationship or being around kids.
Now, tell me though, you said you were relying on the information given to you about him from your family. So, why did your family, your grandmother and your mom, have so much access to knowing about Dakota? Did they see Serenity more often than you did, and was Dakota
Yes,
there?
yes, they did.
And why was that?
Um, I guess addiction. Just to some,
Okay.
and like I said, I never really brought my daughter around it, but
Okay,
now,
so it was more of a personal choice rather than something that Abby had, you know, instilled.
well, I can't say that, but I feel like that's the case. I don't know for sure because I've never gotten an answer from her about that whole situation in general. Like what exactly happened there? Like how did it go from this to that? Um.
How often was your mom and your grandma seeing Serenity?
Oh, they would, like I said, at least once a month.
They would see her once a month
At
at
least.
least. And then would you, when you were in the throes of this addiction and what was going on in your own life, were you trying to see Serenity, or were you
Yeah,
trying to stay away from it?
yes, I'd still see my daughter.
Okay. Okay.
But
I'm just,
like,
and I don't mean that to be in a way to attack you or anything. I'm just curious as to how often somebody from your family, regardless who it was visually with Serenity and meeting Dakota and seeing the dynamic that was
yeah,
happening
because
there.
like I mentioned to you earlier, I literally was living up there by myself, relying on my own devices to even survive. And granted, mind you, like I hate to even. I'm not trying to make this about me in no way. This is about my damn daughter. But from like my mom had two strokes at the age of when I was 16, and that alone put us in an economic or like a stability fracture right there. Like there was a whole fracture in our whole stability as kids. So ever since like being 17, I went from going and dreaming or being everything that I aspired to be, which was like have a 4.0 GPA, be in sports, be involved with school, go to college, get a degree, have a future, be stable, like I can put myself in position to be able to support my own better than I'd ever been supported in my life. And that was
Mhm.
everything that I dreamed, and everything I despised at that age was everything that I had to become because of the simple fact there was just like so much stress and so much, I don't know, there's so much emotional turmoil that came off the back end of that I finally said enough is enough, and I finally resorted to doing the things that I always told myself I wasn't going to, and started living, dipping and dabbing in that kind of I guess a violent lifestyle.
Okay.
And like I said, it was nothing that I ever wanted to do. It definitely wasn't. But I was just in between a rock and a hard place that time. And unfortunately for me, instead of taking the road that I should have taken, I took the road on the left. But
Okay. So, at what point do you remember around what month it was that Abby moved in with Dakota?
I was actually never aware that she even moved in with Dakota. Nobody ever made me aware of that. The last place that I was even aware of her actually physically living was with her grandmother over in Valley Station. And ironically enough, that's like right in the heart of Louisville too. And like that was pretty much the last, I guess, checkpoint, I guess you could say, like as to when it comes to like hearing and being able to video check, because that was the last time I ever got to talk to my daughter was through video chat when I made it out to California. And then like she, I guess, moved out or whatever. But there was like my grandmother had video chatted me, and that was the last time that I ever got to video chat my daughter. I remember that day clear as.
And that was the day in December?
That was actually a little bit after I was in. It was a little bit after. Like I said, I went out to California, and they called me on video chat, and I was able to see my daughter that way. But it was only for a brief amount of time.
So do you think that as far as timing, was that around like January 2021?
I had so much going on at that point in time, I couldn't even tell you. If I would have known if I would have known then what I know now, then I definitely would have kept track with the dates more correctly.
Yeah. Okay. So then you last saw Serenity around Christmas of 2020. Then you video chatted with her a little while later once you got to California. And then when did you notice the shift in Abby's behavior, that the
When she saw,
dynamic of your
like,
relationship was different?
um, I knew that really on the last day that I seen her, because on that last day that I seen my daughter, I knew like I want to say there was something off about my baby mama, because like she didn't even bother to like really talk to me at all. I had to get all my answers through my grandma, even though she was literally right there in front of me, person to person. And so, like, I mean, I should have taken that as a red flag in itself. But if I had to give you an exact date, that would have been it. Like, that's when I knew that something was kind of weird and fishy.
Okay. And then what happened? So that takes us to January, about a year ago. what happened in the beginning of the year? I know that Abby apparently had, moved in with Dakota at some point, whether that was in 2020 or 2021. I'm still not 100% certain. I don't know if
Yeah,
you are.
like I said, that's something that I can't even speak much on because, like I said, I wasn't even made aware that she moved out of her grandmother's.
Mm-hmm.
Literally up until 6 months ago when I found out, like, that she had stopped having complete contact with my grandmother, and that's the bone that broke in the back for me. Because once I found that out, that's when I started asking some big questions. That's when I started like questioning everything.
So she stopped talking to your grandmother and your mother about 6 months ago?
They'd have to give you the exact date. That's just the date that like I said, I don't have the exact answer on that. That's just when I found out.
Okay. And so then what happened? Everybody walk me through, like, everybody was trying to get in touch that before they called CPS, before the welfare checks.
I tried even I reached out to everybody that I knew in Kentucky again, even though I'd like I said once before, I'd asked my friends that I had about this guy months prior. I reached out again, and that's when I found some serious red flags. Because this time when I asked around about him, I actually had found out that he had the charges that he's had.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was actually sent photos of his mugshots and charges by a couple of my friends. They were just showing me like his record and what this guy's about. And just based off of his charges, even I knew right then and there that my baby mama and my daughter could possibly be in trouble.
And when was that?
That was exactly 6 months ago
Okay.
for
So
me.
at that point,
Exactly
okay,
six
so that's
months
when
ago.
you learn about who Dakota really is, his
Yes, and
history,
that's
and
when I started like I said, that's when I started raising all kind of flags because I want to know why the hell hasn't nobody talked to her? Why this? Why that? Of course, you can imagine how many questions I had because of the simple fact that okay, everything just changed and did a complete 180. I'm going from being given the impression that everything's okay with my daughter, and that I got a baby mama who's taking care of her, but come to find out in reality. Um, all this shit's going, or excuse my language, all this is going on. And the best comparison I can give you when you find out that compared to the information you were actually given, and you find out it's the complete opposite, is it that hit harder than I've ever been hit before in my life. I felt like Mike Tyson just blindsided me.
so when you found all of this out and when you found out that nobody was able to get in touch with her, did you try to reach out to Abby?
Yeah, multiple
And what
times.
happened?
She wouldn't. She didn't even read my messages. But I did do this one night. I did. I was actually. It was just like a last resort type of deal. I asked my grandmother for her number because she didn't know that I had a new cell phone number.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't have been programmed in her phone if I were to call. So I made the call, and when I called, that's what made me really freak out because it was a dude that answered, and I'm assuming it was Dakota because as soon as they heard my voice, they hung up.
And that was about 6 months ago?
This was actually about 3 months ago.
3 months ago. Okay. And so then talk me through the very first time that there was a welfare check or you guys had called CPS. When was that? Why was that? Was it just because you
That's
seen her?
another problem that I have because if I had been actually informed on everything that was going on with my daughter as accurately as I should have been, um, I can't say that the situation would be happening right now or not. The only thing I can tell you is that I would definitely have done something months ago if I would have been made aware of the possible fact that my daughter was being assaulted or abused in any type of way.
Now, why are you jumping right now to thinking that she was possibly being abused?
Because that's the reason why the whole thing started. Because apparently it was over a diaper rash, but her grandmother had seen something on her hind end. I'm gonna put it like that, and she called
Whose
CPS.
grandmother?
Yeah,
Sorry, start from the beginning. I don't know about this.
Abby's grandmother had mentioned something about something on my daughter's hind end, and so that prompted her to call CPS. And when they called CPS, they made that it was based off of information given. They had assumed that it was an abusive case, so they showed up over at Abby's to do a welfare check, and that's when my grandmother got the text from Abby saying that they're trying to take the baby away. They're trying to take the baby away, and that was one of the last times my grandmother actually got to talk to her.
And when was that?
Again, I can't give you the exact
Just
date.
ballpark.
Yeah, this was within the last year.
So, like, was it last summer? Maybe last spring?
I want to say last summer, or
Last
maybe
summer.
last spring.
And so it was a diaper rash. So was the concern when it was called and when it was looked into for possible abuse, it wasn't physical abuse. They were thinking more neglect.
Like I said, that's even new information to me, and that's been the most upsetting thing in my personal opinion that I've been told this far up in this case, is because like I said, if I would have found out that there was any suspicion about my daughter being abused in any way, regardless of the consequence, I would have stepped in and I would have done something.
Okay. So I'm just thinking, and again, I know you don't know the dates, but I'm just thinking timeline, as if we know that the last time anybody spoke with Serenity or heard her voice was in June of 2021, I would imagine that this would have had to happen right around that time as well.
And another thing, also up until literally last week, I was living life under the impression that my baby mother still had my child in her care.
Up until last week.
Yeah.
And so you thought that with the missing persons report and with all of these things about the last time somebody had seen her being years ago or talking to her was months ago, you thought that maybe it was just because Abby was hiding her?
There's definitely more to it than that. I don't want to speak on all the answers, but the answer that I'm just hoping for right now is that she is safe and that she is taken care of, and that she may be with a family member that is in cahoots with Dakota and Abby. That's what I want to think. I'm not going to speak on what I don't want to think, because I'm pretty sure anybody with common sense can know what I mean by saying just that.
So you're under the impression that Serenity is alive and well, relatively speaking.
I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna keep that in the forefront of
Of
my
course.
mindset, and until there's some cold hard facts.
Absolutely, as you should. Absolutely. You should always be believing that and hopeful for that. All of us should. I'm just trying to get my mind around this. So you think it could be, if you think she might possibly be with a family member of Dakota's?
Dakota or Abby's.
But isn't Abby's family the one who raised
somebody,
concern?
somebody knows something, and they know more than they're letting on. But I don't know. I don't know what kind of pressure they need to feel, because you got the whole national, like there's national defenses actually working in this case, and I don't know. I've never, up until this point in my life, I can sit here and tell you, out of every experience that I've gone through, whether it be negative, positive, whatever, out of every experience I've firsthand gone through, this is the one experience where I couldn't call somebody on my contact list or hop on Messenger and contact that hasn't been through it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that I've come across in my whole life has been through the situation that I'm going through, so I can't really explain it because I've never been through it before. The only thing I can tell you is that it just feels like there's a palm literally like gripping at my heart, and it could at any moment it could just like squeeze shut.
I can't imagine how you must be feeling, and I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'm just curious, and I know you don't have the answers. I'm just curious more to know your thoughts on this. So if Abby's family is vocal about what they know, the last time they spoke with Serenity, the last time they saw Serenity, filing the missing persons report, all of these, like being in the know with that, then Abby also was ordered to deliver Serenity and show that, she was, in good care and didn't. Now she's sitting in jail because of that. do you think that if she really did have possession, or if a family member had possession of Serenity, that they would still be doing that and she would still be in jail?
She was really, really fast with to make the comment. She wanted to invoke her Fifth Amendment. She was really fast about that. So the reason why I think that there's a possibility at her still being out there is because of that, based off of that simple fact, because of how fast they were to invoke that Fifth Amendment. Like, they're not trying. I don't think it's so. I don't want to think. I don't think it's more so like the detrimental stuff that everybody, I don't know, for some reason is wanting to hear, or I guess because they keep on mentioning it so much. But I seriously think that because and also they were found all the way in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Like, there's got to be some type of help getting to Dakota, because you're not able to live the lifestyle of being on the run without having no source of income, without having no source of help. There's no way you're going to make it even all the way to Kansas. So there's got to be some type of outside help that is helping them. I don't know whether I can't speak on whether it's his family, her family, or whatever. I can't speak on it because I don't know. I wish I did. With everything in me, I wish I knew.
So
But
what do you think that her reason would have been for placing Harmony in the custody of somebody else, regardless whose family member it is? And then,
because she doesn't want to give up Serenity.
What do you mean she doesn't want to give up Serenity?
She'll do anything and everything not to have her baby taken. I do know that.
And Serenity was about to be taken from her.
Yeah.
When?
Well, she wasn't about to be taken. That was her impression, because based off of when CPS made their initial first contact.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So you're saying that when CPS made that initial contact, Abby was worried that they were going to.
Made it loud and clear that she was under the impression that her baby was being taken away.
So you think that she perhaps is hiding Serenity with another family member?
That's been about a year's worth of time to work with. And there's a whole lot of stuff you can get done in a year when it comes to planning or doing something in this kind of manner. Like, you could, that's a whole year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole year of her not being accounted for. That's a whole year of nobody talking or seeing her. There's a whole year of possibilities that could actually be going on right now.
Now, we had heard, though, that Abby and Dakota ended up moving in with a friend of theirs in July of this last summer of 2021, and that Serenity wasn't with her. So if she was
ironically enough, that's about at the time that the first initial CPS contact was made.
Right. I guess my question is that if her worry and concern was no longer having custody of Serenity, she was living with a friend and didn't have Serenity with her by choice, is what you're making. You're saying that she perhaps put her with another family member. So in either way, she would have essentially not had Serenity in her custody.
It's pretty much like her trying to control the situation.
Okay.
But she just doesn't realize that it's not a situation that you can control.
Now, what about Abby's mom, who said that she hasn't seen Serenity since Christmas of 2020 either?
Me and her mom have always had a rocky relationship. I really am not in position to be able to even speak on her. And I'd much rather not.
Okay. So you haven't spoken with Abby's family at all?
No.
And does your grandmother and your mother speak with them?
Because if I would have, and like I said, if I would have found out the exact nature of why her grandmother called in the first place, I wouldn't be in Florida.
And does your mom or does your grandmother talk to her grandmother or her mom?
Yes, my grandmother, they're all keeping in contact with one another.
And do they have a good relationship?
Yes. I never got to meet the grandmother because she never really wanted, as far as I knew, she never wanted to meet me, so I never even got that chance.
Do you think that her mom and her grandmother know where Serenity is?
I can't speak on that.
Okay.
There's a
Hmm.
whole bunch of speculations that could be made. Hell, there's even a speculation made that I could have been involved in it because apparently they've been making vacation trips down here to Florida. But I mean, if I would have known that they were making vacation trips down here to Florida, I would have tried to intercept them or something. If I wouldn't even known that they were in the area and didn't even bother to like ask me if I wanted to see my daughter.
Okay. So, so right now it's you believe that she's with a family member of
Yes,
either Abby's or Dakota's.
that's what I believe, and that's what any father in my shoes would want to believe. Like, and
Of
that's the only thing
course.
I allow myself to believe right now because I'm not going to believe anything, like I said, detrimental unless there are cold hard facts in my face.
Absolutely. And then, so as far as Abby being in jail now because of this, you think that it's because she invoked her Fifth Amendment right or whatever she did because she wants to just not speak and she wants Serenity to stay wherever she's at. You don't, and it's been suggested out there that perhaps Abby is a victim herself from Dakota and
Now
that maybe,
let's not get that misconstrued either. I'm gonna make it loud and clear. I don't care. I don't care how much of like a hostage situation this man has on her mind. Everybody is their own individual and everybody is their own human being. And last time I checked, if you were even human, like you're not gonna let anything happen to your kid. And when it comes to like letting your family know the welfare of your kid, nobody that's got a normal mindset is gonna keep that or try to hide that information from the immediate loved ones. Nobody in their right mind gonna do that.
so you don't think that Dakota's the driving force behind this. You think
I
that
think he played big influence, like 90% influence, but she had her own part in this, and that's like I firmly believe that.
now
There's
what
something
influence
that
do you think that he had?
I like I said, a good 90%.
But I mean, as far as like, what do you think he was trying to influence her to do? To put Serenity in the care of a family member?
I can't like I wish I could I wish I could speak on that part, but like I said, I never really got to even meet the guy in person, so I can't really tell you what he would resort to and what he wouldn't.
Okay. But which I totally get because you don't know him as a person, so you can't speculate. I
But what I do
understand
know
that.
based off of the facts that I've been given is that, like I said in the beginning about him, like he's known for being in his past relationships, even for finding women with low self esteem, just so that he can exploit every weakness that he can find on them, just so that he can have them attached to his little set of puppet strings.
And you think that's what he did with Abby. You
I
think that
know
she
that's what
was
he did,
okay.
because like Abby, that's her kryptonite right there. If that makes any sense,
Mhm.
that's her weakness. Like if you were to go in there and I'm guessing I'm gonna go ahead and call him a piece of crap. Like he's a pro at being a piece of crap because like I said, he's known for beating his girlfriends and known for taking like mentally and physically abusing them nonstop.
And you think he may have done that with Abby?
I know it. I know that's what he did. I mean,
How
hell,
do you
it doesn't take a genius. You can just look at her mugshot and see that she just got beat the hell out of. She got a
So
black eye. She like I knew it immediately. And that's the main thing that I brought up. It's like 6 months ago when I first found out about this stuff. I kid you not, this is on like I hate that I'm able to like call it out like that. But I literally called every detail of this to the T 6 months ago when I told my grandmother about it, and like she was literally sitting in her chair in the next room. I said, "This dude is playing mind games with Abby, and I can feel it. I don't know what it is. Call it father's instinct, call it whatever you want, but I just knew, like,
So if you had an inclination that something was wrong 6 months ago and nobody was talking, why did it take until January for
because
the missing?
I'm not allowed to leave the state.
No. That I'm just curious. Why did it take until January
I
for
don't
the missing persons report to be filed, and why was it her family who filed it if they might
Well, actually, it
possibly
wasn't her
have
family.
Serenity?
It was actually my family and her family that went and filed it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought it was her grandmother and her
Oh,
father.
the initial one, that as far as I know, the initial, yes. But this, the whole missing persons report, all the family went there for that one.
And that was the one in January,
No,
correct?
that was this most recent one that they went and made.
Oh, okay. So then but I guess that kind of still goes back to my question there is if nobody was talking or seeing Serenity and everybody was concerned all the way to 6 months ago, why did it take 6 months for anybody to
I really,
file any
I
sort of
had an
report?
answer to give you on that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
really do.
Okay.
It was
So,
like it felt like, have you ever like that scenario right there, or that thing that you, or what you just said right there, has been haunting me for ever since it started.
but I mean, to be fair, you could have filed that report if you were concerned months
I
ago,
was
couldn't
concerned, but
you?
I was told that I didn't need to take it to that extent.
Who was telling you that?
I don't want to go into detail about it. It was just coming from reliable enough sources to keep my butt planted where I'm at instead of taking any action.
Okay, so people were saying that's, you know, it doesn't need to be taken to
I'm
that
just
level. She's
thinking stuff.
probably just
Yeah,
hiding
like
Serenity.
they kept on telling me I'm just thinking stuff. This ain't it ain't like that. Over and over again, repetitively getting told that, even though I'm repetitively getting that bad gut feeling. I felt like a
Okay.
damn. I felt like I felt really like right now, like just thinking about it, like it feels like, I don't know. Just to give you like a picture perfect example, I guess. Um, Imagine yourself just literally drowning, and right, and you're like, and you're suffocating for air, and no matter, and you're thrashing just for like a damn branch or a hand or something to like grab onto just to pull yourself up, but there is nothing there, and slowly, but you don't, but you're not drowning. You are just forced to sit and bask in that feeling of like suffocation, and I feel like in a way I kind of got robbed of being able to like doing or having any role in, like, there's so much shit that I wish I could have done a whole lot sooner, or I would have done a whole lot sooner, because I feel like it would have played a big factor in what's going on right now.
Okay. Okay,
Just
that's
based
fair.
on the fact that I called it from the very jump, like 6 months ago, I knew that something was wrong in my heart. I knew it. Like, I knew it.
So you wish you would have done something.
Very much. Yeah.
So then, just to kind of circle back a little bit to the dynamic between Dakota and Abby, it's your belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he's controlling, that he preys on these weak women
Yeah.
because he wants to basically have control over their mind and exploit their weaknesses and all of these things. So he did that with Abby and basically got her under his control to do whatever he wanted. Then at some point, CPS gets called. Abby's worried that they're going to take Serenity away. So she
That
and
probably,
Dakota,
that'll probably set them in a downward spiral right there, because dude's got a record as is, and so as soon as CPS comes up, of course you're gonna be scared to death, because the dude's probably scared to death to go back to jail. Just because an individual like him probably gets picked on or beat up in jail, for real. So he's intimidated to go back to jail, and that's what scares me the most, because somebody like that is really, really unpredictable when it comes to trying to lock them back up.
mm-hmm. I guess my question is if they were ordered by the police to turn over Serenity or to give information of her whereabouts and they chose to flee to Kansas instead, like they did, and then ultimately get arrested, are they, you think that that's because they just didn't want to give up the location of Serenity?
There's definitely going to be an end game. I just don't know what it is right now.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm taking steps of my own to be able to produce results as quickly as possible. Even like I don't know, I've called him like 50 times a day, but I've been trying to set up at least a video visit with like the mother of my child, so I can try to get answers of my own.
Okay.
But like I said, I've been trying to call them all day, and I haven't even gotten an answer from their front desk to even be able to set up an initial visit. So I guess whenever I get done with this interview, I can try calling them again. Even,
So you want to talk to Abby and see if you can get through to
yeah,
her.
because I'm baffled. because I
Mm-hmm.
literally like whenever we were talking, I did tell her like exactly like this is I told her exactly the type of guy like this guy matches everything that I told her that she needed to stay away from if she wanted to have a stable or somebody that was going to truly love her in a relationship. She needed to especially stay away from that type of individual because
Which I agree, and I understand where you're coming from, but I guess that's maybe where my confusion is lying a little bit, because it seems like it's two separate issues. One issue is that she's with this reportedly abusive boyfriend who, is preying on her weaknesses and that has control over her. But then the other issue is that she doesn't want to lose custody of Serenity. And so she's wanting to protect her and put her with somebody else, which doesn't really have anything to do with Dakota.
yeah.
It seems like it's two separate things. So that's where I'm trying to see where the crossover is and if there's some sort of tie that we're missing.
There's still a whole bunch of questions that I've got there unanswered right now, and I wish I had more results to share.
Do you think that if a family member, whether Dakota or Abby, if a family member had Serenity right now, that given the coverage that this is getting, given given Abby being in jail over it and all of these things, do you think that they would come forward and say, hey,
Hell
Serenity's
no,
okay? And why not?
because what everything you just said, the exact amount of pressure that's coming down on this thing. Like, if they had my daughter, I mean, they might if they're smart enough to be able to make her appear without having any lurking notion coming back on them. Um, that's highly unlikely though, just because of the amount of coverage there is and how many people are aware of this thing. Like,
But
you're
I don't know
if,
that they wouldn't get.
if somebody were to be just upfront, like come out with my daughter all of a sudden, they're pretty much like go ahead and proclaiming for themselves to go ahead and spend the next quarter century in jail.
But why would they be in jail? Not for kidnapping. Like, I'm just thinking, and I'm just speaking out loud here. Like, say, for example, if Abby's father said, guys, look, Serenity's been in my care for the last 2 years. I've had her. She's safe. She's fine. Abby
But for
put her
somebody
with
to come
me.
up, especially right now out of nowhere, and just do that, yeah, it would be awesome because we found my daughter. But at the same time, that wouldn't make no sense for somebody to do because the exact amount of trouble that they would be getting themselves into by admitting that, or even have any type of connection to having my daughter. Like if they
But I
that
don't know that they would be in trouble, I guess is what I'm saying. Because if, as the parent, if Abby put Serenity in, if, as as the parent, if Abby put Serenity in the custody of a family member to watch, whether, and just think of it as long-term babysitting, even for example, they aren't doing anything wrong because they didn't kidnap her. They're watching her. They did something
but
wrong,
then you're
ethically speaking.
then you're going ahead and making the like you're automatically questioning it. Like how are you just now going to say something and you've been seeing all these like news coverages and all this report
Absolutely. But
and you're kind
legally, I don't think that that has any
of
ramifications.
yeah. I mean legally it doesn't, but you got to see it from like a because a lot of people don't think like that. You know, a lot of people can't play the whole tape through.
Uh-huh.
A
So
lot of
you're
people
thinking that
are
in their
capable
mind,
of
they're just
doing
like,
that.
no, we're going to run this to the ground. Like, I can't come forward now.
I think they're it. I think whoever they're in a bunch. There's a massive state of fear right now.
Okay. Okay.
Because, like I said, not only is everybody in America like had their eye or their attention drawn on this. Um, this is I really want to be able to say I really want to be able to agree with you.
What do you mean?
That somebody would just do that. I really wish that would. I really wish I could honestly believe that.
Because in your heart, you believe that is the circumstance.
And when I got a gut feeling about something, 99% of the time it's turned out to be right.
Okay. And I know you said you weren't sure which family member that Serenity may be with, but do you believe that she's safe with whatever family member she's with?
And I'm gonna believe it.
Okay. Okay.
Because
So then,
like, really, to be honest with you, that's the only thing I got to hang on to right now.
absolutely. And I think that having faith and having hope in that is the most important thing right now. And I would never want you to get in the mental state of a different situation, because that is, of course, not helpful to finding serenity and getting answers. I'm just trying to understand a little bit about what the motive from Abby could have been, but I understand you're saying it's because she thought she was going to lose custody of her.
Because it's like Abby is also severely codependent.
Mm-hmm.
And when it, like, I don't want to say she's the type of individual to value a relationship over, like, a relationship with somebody else over her own blood. But I just, I just really wish I had more answers. I really wish I had more answers to give than what I've got. And, it's just been prolonged so long. I'm just ready to, have closure in some way, because this is agonizing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so I have a couple questions for you. First, I'm imagining that once this interview airs, there are going to be a lot of questions that surface. So my first question for you is, are you open to doing this again in the future and answering some of those questions? Is my first question for you. And then my second question is, what else do you want people who are watching this to know? Whether it's about Serenity, whether it's about you.
It's not as much as wanting them to know. It's more so wanting them to just try and do. I want them, if they can, just please be proactive about this as much as you can be. Print out flyers, spread the word. Even hashtag Find Serenity as much as you possibly can. Anywhere you're at, it doesn't matter what country you're in, where you're at on this entire earth. If you're somewhere, just make it aware that there's, like, the child. We need to find her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you want everybody to just continue to make this as big of a deal as possible and spread awareness.
Please be relentless about spreading this information and making it go far and wide so that we can bring her home.
Okay. And are you willing to answer some questions that we receive after this?
No, I'll answer questions, but I won't answer any questions as in reference to if they have any entail of, like, something detrimental has happened to I refuse to answer any kind of questions.
Of course. Yeah, and I wouldn't expect you to. I'm thinking I would imagine that this is going to probe a lot more questions out there in terms of, what people may have questions about. Again, what you think may have happened, about questions about maybe Abby's mental state last time you saw her. I don't even know, but I'm sure a lot of questions will surface. So I just wanted to see if you'll be open to doing something like this again in the near future to address some of those questions.
Yeah. I'm tired of having panic attacks multiple times throughout the day just because I don't have answers, man. Like, it's just...
Yeah. Well, I do think that what you had said is right. As far as people sharing this, using the hashtag and spreading this as far and wide as possible, ultimately that hopefully would apply pressure in the right areas so that answers do surface.
It has to.
It will. And, if you're able to get in touch with Abby, maybe you can get through to her, and maybe she will open up to you and confide in you with what's going on and what the truth is.
I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try my best.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to share here, that you want me to know, or that you want anybody watching to know?
The only thing, like I said, the only thing that I ask is just please, like, be as proactive as you can about this. And like I said at the beginning of you recording, don't ever take anything for granted, because you never know when something like this happen to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I know that everybody is obviously praying and keeping hopeful thoughts for Serenity's safe return and to find out some answers. So you have a lot of people in your corner and rooting for your daughter. And you have a lot of people who are trying to make sure that she's brought home safely. So please know that.
When she's found and she's brought home, she will never go to Kentucky without me again. Never.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this interview and speaking with me. Honestly, I know that you have so much going on right now and that, you know, you're very, very stressed with everything. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to answer some of these questions. All right, so now that you're fully caught up, you know the backstory, I shared that interview with you. I just want to say I was really torn with my feelings about Dave, especially after this interview, because part of me felt that he still was responsible being the biological father and that he should have been more present in Serenity's life and that maybe he took the easy way out and just, you know, was lax and that this could have maybe been prevented. But then also I felt like he was trying to better himself and his situation, and I could really tell how heartbroken he was over everything and how in denial he was about what the reality most likely was and unfortunately is in the situation with Serenity. And so I was really, really torn after this. And unfortunately, 1 week after this interview, on February 18th of 2022, Serenity's body was found. So the last time I did an update on this case was back in February of this year when that had happened and when we had just received the heart-wrenching news that little Serenity was recovered. Her mother, Catherine, also known as Abby, and her mother's boyfriend, Dakota Hill, had both been charged with murder. Additionally, Dakota was charged with abuse of a corpse. Now, at the time, we didn't know the cause of death or any other details or information. It was very hush-hush. But the news devastated Serenity's family, as expected, and I can't begin to imagine the level of heartache, outrage, frustration, sadness, and regret that just really consumed them. Because how can you comprehend something so incomprehensible? And how could this act of carelessness and just utter disgust and disregard for the life of an innocent child not make anybody just erupt with tears and a never-ending flow of tears?
Me and her were the only two people in the world. My grandma used to tell me the same thing, like she said when she held me the first time, that it was like everything else in the world just disappeared with me and her, and I never knew what she meant by that up until that moment that I got to experience. Just true love.
She would wake up in the mornings and the first thing she would say was, "Good morning," you know, just every morning, just happy. And she loved learning anything. She wanted to know. She investigated it. She loved to sing. Her favorite song was "Kiss from a Rose" by Seal.
My favorite thing was just her mean mug right out the gate. I love that. Because anytime she was nervous about somebody or something, she just give them that look, and I always loved that about her. But overall, she was just really bright and outgoing. You could tell that there was a heck of a future ahead of her.
I don't even know the words for it. I just can't fathom it. I can't understand. I'll never understand. And we honestly didn't think going down and filing that report was going to end this way.
No.
We honestly thought she was just trying to keep her hidden from CPS, afraid her mother was going to take her. That was her excuse to us, saying everything was fine. Messages saying, "Tell her happy birthday."
She just kept on, Abby kept on stringing us along, letting us think that everything was fine. She really did.
And she played us against each other.
Yeah, she did.
Oh, she's here. Oh, she's there. Oh, she's here. Until we finally all just started checking together like, no, she ain't there. She ain't here. She ain't here. Yeah. You know, and she knew that.
Yeah. I collapsed and I couldn't move, if that says anything. I literally couldn't move. And it's not a feeling I've ever felt before in my life.
She loved to jump on the trampoline. We got a trampoline. She woke me up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we went out and jumped on the trampoline at 7 o'clock in the morning in our pajamas. because she wanted to.
Even when she got mad at me. I want to go home. Why? Because you said no. Even that was a favorite memory. I can't just pick one. But I wanted to make more.
I wish I could have been there more. That's the main thing.
Why didn't she give her to one of us? If Serenity was a burden to her, why didn't she give her to one of us? She had multitudes of people. Even on her mom's side, her grandmother would have taken her in a heartbeat. I would have taken her in a heartbeat. They would have taken her in a heartbeat.
It didn't have to be this way.
No, it didn't. It didn't.
Not only did she get robbed of a life, but I got robbed of my chance to be able to be an actual dad. And that is not cool.
I can't express the gratitude that we have for the Shelby County Sheriff's Office and all the agencies that helped find her. And the community and the love and support is overwhelming. Couldn't have imagined this. But she's found. And we're gonna miss her every single day for the rest of our lives. And I don't know what else to say.
Justice hasn't always been served. And that is the main thing. That is my main goal out of anything. I'm not gonna rest. I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna keep pushing until justice for my baby girl is served up.
A vigil was held for Serenity on February 27th, and family and dozens of community members gathered at Cedar Creek Park in Shelby County to honor Serenity. And Serenity's biological father, Dave, who you saw in that interview, said a prayer before they then released balloons, saying, "I ask that you take care of my baby girl because she was called home too early. I know she's up there now in good hands, and I'm just keeping my faith that I'm going to see her one day." So a big part of this case was that Serenity's biological dad, Dave, reportedly received text messages from an unknown phone number the day before Serenity was found. The cryptic messages said that they knew where Serenity was and that she was inside a suitcase. The first message said, "I know someone who knows where your daughter is." So Dave questioned whoever was sending these messages and threatened to get the police involved, of course. And then this anonymous person sent, "From what I know, she's in a suitcase." Now, if Abby and Dakota were arrested and held in custody on February 6th, 2022, who sent these messages just a few days before she was found on February 18th? The thought was that maybe this was just some sort of sick prank, but if this was true, who knew what happened besides Dakota and Abby? And why the hell were they just now speaking up? And we recently learned that this message was in fact true, which we will get into soon. So shortly after this news was announced, David sent me some very alarming text messages, which I don't think that I've ever spoken about publicly. His texts were very concerning by nature, and he was alluding to a potential relapse, and he mentioned having nightmares, a reoccurring nightmare. And when I responded to him to check in and make sure he was okay, I was met with silence. So because of this, I immediately found his mom on Facebook and reached out to her to let her know that I was concerned and said, I'm getting these weird messages from Dave. I really hope everything's okay, but I feel like I need to bring it to your attention so that you can reach out. Obviously, I'm just somebody on the opposite side of the country, and there's nothing I can do, so, here's the messages, and I'm really concerned. And she responded, and she informed me that he unfortunately did in fact relapse shortly after sending those messages. On March 7th, he relapsed and was apparently prepared to take his own life, but luckily, that didn't happen. However, he was arrested instead, and he was charged with battery on an elderly person and theft of a motor vehicle. Allegedly, this was a carjacking gone wrong, and then he got physical with the driver. He was released on April 28th with time served. Now, since then, I'm not sure where Dave is. He's not active on his Facebook. I have texted him to offer my condolences, and the texts are now going to green. There isn't anything public as far as people being seen with him or things that he has said. His brother Dylan has been pretty active on Facebook, basically saying that if Abby and Dakota don't get life in prison, he will, alluding to justice, take it how you will, and clearly is, of course, very upset by everything going on, rightfully so. And I have been in touch with Dave's mom on and off since all of this happened, and I'll share more of those details in a bit because we talked again this morning. So Abby and Dakota made their first court appearance via video conference in Kentucky on March 2nd, 2022. Both Abby and Dakota pleaded not guilty to their respective charges. Their bond was set at $1 million, and an attorney asked for a lower bond for Abby because at the time she was 7 months pregnant, but this was denied. Now, how can someone pregnant live every day growing another human being inside of them, knowing what happened to your firstborn child? I will never know. It is just absolutely stomach churning and completely appalling that she's even capable of having another baby, because she doesn't need to have custody of any other child ever again, in my opinion. As we heard Serenity's aunt and grandma say earlier, they would have taken her at any time and even called the police for welfare checks multiple times. One of the most significant issues I've had in this case is how did this happen? I don't understand why the police or CPS never checked on Serenity or raised the issue up the chain of the command if they couldn't. How does a system designed to help the most vulnerable constantly fall short in so many instances? And it kind of feels disingenuous to accept the same old retired line of, she fell through the cracks, or we try to get to as many cases as we can. That is not an appropriate response. We cover so many criminal cases, and the facts with the disappearances and deaths of young children are similar. It is just not a coincidence when this keeps happening time and time again. So where is the accountability for these government-funded programs?
As we still wait for the final autopsy results on 4-year-old Serenity McKinney, there are questions about the state's involvement in the young girl's life. Many wonder how it took 1 year to list her as a missing person. Kristen Goodwillie talks with family and has more on what the state did to find the little girl.
It's along this wooded area that 4-year-old Serenity McKinney was found February 20th, 2022.
There's no reason for this. There were family members that wanted her, that asked to keep her.
According to Serenity's grandparents, the child was last seen December 2020, last heard on the phone in June 2021, then nothing. Family says her mother, Catherine Abby McKinney, and her boyfriend, Dakota Hill, isolated themselves.
She started blocking everybody in June, and then finished blocking everybody around September. Red flags started going up.
Abby and Dakota are now charged in Serenity's murder. Family believe they are just one aspect of Serenity's death and that there needs to be more accountability.
CPS needs to be held accountable for what they did. They never laid eyes on Serenity.
An aunt of Abby's, who asked not to be named, shared phone records and messages she says highlights a bigger issue. Phone records show the aunt called LMPD's non-emergency number 6 times between June 26th and June 28th. She says she was asking for a wellness check on Serenity. These messages show a conversation between her and Abby, where Abby says, "Aunt, did you have the well check thing done?" We've requested those recorded calls to dispatch, as well as body cam video from the wellness checks, and have been told LMPD needs to approve their release. Shortly after, Serenity's great-grandma says she called CPS's hotline to report abuse.
Call into the hotline. There's not a confirmation that the report was ever made.
At a loss of what to do next, the family called their friend Shannon Lehman, who's a board-certified behavioral analyst.
Because I've been in social services for practically 20 years, the family reached out to me and was telling me what was going on.
Lehman said she filed a report online. This is the email confirmation she received.
That said I filed the report, and that if they chose not to open or not to investigate for any reason, they would follow up with me by email, and then I never received another nothing from them.
In the past, Lehman says CPS contacted her to clarify statements made on a report. She never got any calls with this one. I requested Serenity's files from the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services. The cabinet denied my request, citing a statute that says a child's file can only be made public where child has resulted in a child fatality or near fatality, and that the cabinet is required to conduct an internal review. Until that review is complete, we can't get those records.
My report was filed July 8th, and if I find out that she was still alive on July 8th, I'm going to be even more devastated, because that means she could have been saved.
It also means we can't corroborate the family's claims that the cabinet closed their case.
How do you go do a child protective to check on a child and then say that they're okay if you never see them?
We asked if social workers ever close a case without seeing a child. They sent us regulation that states social workers must meet face-to-face with a child. At this point, they won't tell us if they ever saw Serenity.
Do you think that Serenity fell through the cracks?
Absolutely.
In 2021, the last time family says they heard from Serenity, the state saw 208 child deaths or near deaths related to reported abuse, according to a report from the cabinet. The report also says that in the last 5 years, 71% of child deaths already had social workers investigating the families.
If it's not in the policy, I think there should be a policy that if a CPS report is filed on a child, regardless, someone should lay eyes on the child.
2 weeks later, the same reporter who made the request we just watched finally got a response. Take a listen.
How would I go about getting a welfare check on a child?
6 calls in 3 days, from the aunt of young Serenity McKinney to authorities worried about the 4-year-old's safety. In those calls between June 26th and 28th of last year, you can hear how the aunt's questions turned to emotional pleas.
The mother refuses to let us see or even hear her on the phone. And we're all very concerned for her safety.
Did you contact Child Protective Services?
I haven't yet. I wanted to try to make contact to get a physical. I wanted a police officer to physically see the child, to just have proof of life at this point.
I understand, but all they can do is knock on the door. If they don't answer, there's nothing they can do.
There were 2 requests for police to lay eyes on Serenity. However, with these call recordings, Louisville police redacted much of the conversation with white noise. So in this June 26th call, it's impossible to know exactly what the aunt was alleging.
It's a long story, but nobody has seen or talked to her in 6 months. Nobody. She refuses to let anybody talk to her, see her, anything, because of the controlling boyfriend that she has. And we don't even know we don't know what's going on. And I know, and I just want to make sure this baby's okay.
After that call and over the 3 days, the aunt called back for updates, and each time the response was,
okay, it looks like they did not get an answer at the door.
So what are police required to do on welfare checks? Well, we went through LMPD's standard operating procedures, and there doesn't appear to be any specific guidance on what to do if a child is never seen. But according to their policies mandated by state law, if an officer suspects any going on, that officer is required to report it within the department, and that must be relayed to CPS. At this point, we haven't been granted access to those files and don't know whether those reports were ever made.
Before we continue, I want to reiterate that Serenity's death is 100% the fault of Abby and Dakota and them alone. For all we know, the wellness checks may not have even been successful, even if they were promptly followed up. Yes, it is frustrating that her death could have been prevented. It is also frustrating that these are the systems we rely upon for children in unsafe homes with irresponsible parents. We waited months for DNA confirmation that Serenity's remains were covered, even though law enforcement was almost certain given the circumstance and evidence that they had recovered. And in May, we did get an update.
I'm broken. I don't know any other word to say other than that.
In the months since, Serenity's family has planned a funeral, but a date hasn't been set because remains have not been released.
They told me that I could have a funeral service without her, but that's just not... I can't do that.
Bullitt County Coroner David Billings says first DNA must confirm the remains are in fact Serenity's, and so far that hasn't been an easy task for the state medical examiner.
We have to positively identify the remains that were found here in Bullitt County. And we do that by DNA testing that's done by the state crime lab.
Billings says the first sample sent to the lab did not contain enough viable DNA for testing. Another sample was taken about 3 weeks ago, but there's no indication on exactly when answers will come back to Bullitt County.
We wait and assure the family that just as soon as we find out, we will let them know.
Serenity's grandmother has been calling the coroner's office every other week. She says those conversations have been filled with compassion while everyone waits for answers.
They have been impacted as well. Every time that I talk to them, they are very nice. They're wanting her to be released just as much as we are.
Billings says a cause of death won't be released until DNA results are confirmed.
Little did we know we wouldn't have confirmation that the remains were in fact Serenity's until August, nearly 7 months after she was found. And the county coroner confirmed that the remains were Serenity's. Her cause of death, however, was still not released, and the coroner said that the information would come in a final report at a later date. A few days later, Serenity's family celebrated what would have been her 5th birthday.
A roller coaster of emotions as Serenity McKinney's family celebrated her birthday and honored her short life.
WDRB's Katrina Nickel explains why her loved ones spent months waiting for answers.
It's an infinite reminder for the family and friends remembering Serenity McKinney.
Pinwheels, when the wind blows, goes in a circle. So every time it blows, it's just a reminder that her memory will keep going. And she will live on through all of us.
On her 5th birthday, loved ones celebrated with cupcakes and honored her remains, finally returning to her family.
We're just very thankful to have Serenity home. It's been a long process. It's been a long wait.
Then on October 10th, 2022, Abby and Dakota were back in court for a hearing for their final pretrial conferences. Now, if you remember back in March during her first court appearance, Abby's public defender informed the court that Abby was due to have her second baby in 2 months. In this video, she is clearly no longer pregnant, and she reportedly had the baby in June. We don't know exactly where that child is or really any information at all.
It became another emotional hearing in the courtroom for the family of young Serenity McKinney, the Shelby County girl who was reported missing, later found dead near the Jefferson-Bullitt County line back in February. We have been following this tragedy since the beginning of it, and it is our top story tonight at 6. Hello, everybody. I'm Doug Proffitt. 8 months later, the 2 suspects charged with her murder were back in court today with attorneys to talk about trial details. You see them on your screen right here. Serenity's own mother, Catherine Abby McKinney, and her boyfriend, Dakota Hill, are also charged with abuse of Serenity's corpse. WHS 11's Isaiah Kim Martinez was in the courtroom today and sharing why Serenity's family says this hearing felt much different. Isaiah's live in the newsroom. Isaiah?
Well, Doug, Serenity's paternal grandmother tells me Catherine McKinney has looked over at them in court before, but it's the way she did it this time that led her to feel even stronger about her desire for a jury trial.
She'll glance at us, but today she actually physically turned her head to look at us, and that kind of bothered me, yes.
Melody Roller has been at status hearings in her granddaughter Serenity McKinney's case before. All of them understandably end up emotional.
I guess because I'm battling on forgiveness and I realize that I'm not ready to forgive yet.
Monday was the final pretrial conference until January. Serenity's mother, Catherine McKinney, and boyfriend Dakota Hill, both charged with murder,
Commonwealth being represented in both cases,
appeared before a judge. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys say they're on track for an early 2023 trial. They told the judge, outside of a few outstanding lab reports from Kentucky State Police,
I believe it's additional DNA evidence.
They've got the majority of evidence they need to proceed. The judge then reminded McKinney and Hill, if they intend on negotiating a potential plea agreement, the next couple months would be the time to do that. Roller telling us a plea just won't cut it for them.
I really want to go in front of 12 people. I want the justice system to work in the proper way.
For the murder charges, both McKinney and Hill face anywhere from 20 to 50 years in prison or a life sentence if convicted.
After the hearing, Melody Roller, who is Serenity's paternal grandmother and Dave's mother, said that their family is praying that this case does go in front of a jury, saying, I'm battling on forgiveness with them both, and I realize that I'm not ready to forgive yet. She said, "I don't want a plea deal. I want this to go before 12 people. I want the justice system to work in the proper way. The longer that they're in jail, the less likely it is that they can hurt another child." Then on October 19th, this year, just a couple of days ago, Serenity's final autopsy and coroner's report were released. Now, the gruesome details are bone-chilling and maddening. This was one of the hardest, if not the hardest, coroner reports that I think I've ever read. The autopsy report said that 4-year-old Serenity was found in a suitcase wrapped in plastic with a sand-like substance surrounding her. Her right wrist and her right leg were broken. Now, nobody should ever have to think about a precious 4-year-old little girl this way, or any child for that matter. Babies enrich our lives and make us whole. So while reading this, I kept getting angrier and angrier just thinking about Abby and Dakota and the fact that they have another child out there. They are just the scum of the earth. They are trash humans who I hope will never step foot outside the prison for the rest of their unfortunate, pathetic, useless, worthless lives.
Detailing just how the missing 4-year-old was found, skeletonized, wrapped in plastic and stuffed into a suitcase. What did the medical examiner say about how Serenity died?
Well, Doug, first, her death has been ruled a homicide. The autopsy report for Serenity McKinney reveals the suitcase she was found in was filled with sand and that she was deceased for some time. The report goes on to say McKinney had a fracture on her right arm and thigh bone. There were also parts of her remains that investigators could not find, and investigators were forced to identify Serenity by a dental analysis. Now, right now, the exact cause of her death is still unknown, and we talked to Serenity's grandmother, Melody Roller, and in a statement she said, quote, "I want people to remember her by her beautiful smile and not what these monsters did to her." In the newsroom, Taylor Woods, WHAS 11, on your side.
The manner of death is homicide, which we already knew, but the cause of death is unknown due to the condition that she was found in. Since Dakota is charged with abuse of a corpse, I can only assume that he is the one that wrapped her in the plastic, put her inside a green suitcase, filled it with sand or dirt or whatever it was, and then disposed of her on the side of the road near a wooded area. She didn't have drugs or alcohol in her system, but her right wrist and right femur were broken. Along with some organs that were not present, or at least not identifiable in the report at the time of her autopsy, 2 fingers were also missing. This poor, sweet, innocent little baby girl. And remember, Dave was getting those text messages saying that she was inside a suitcase. Who was sending those text messages? Who knew? And why are they not also being held responsible and, being arrested and being charged with something? Because clearly they knew the details well before the public did. How did they know? As I mentioned, I have been in contact with Dave's mom and Serenity's grandma on and off since earlier this year. We spoke again last night and this morning, and she has actually said that she refuses to read this new report, that it is just a repeat of February 18th all over again, and she does not want to read the details. She says that all they want is justice and for the world to remember Serenity's beautiful smile. She also said that she is going to continue to show up at court and do interviews with the media to ensure that this does not get forgotten. She also said that she wants as many people as possible to gather around the courthouse and stand with her on the days that she can't bring herself to go into the actual courtroom and chooses to stand outside instead. So Abby and Dakota are scheduled to have their separate trials begin in January of 2023. As soon as more information comes out in discovery, evidence, testimony, I will let you know because I'm going to be following this very closely. I don't know what it is about this case, guys. I don't know if it's because I have a child around the same age. I don't know if it's because I've covered this on my channel before. Or I don't know if it's because of the interview I had with Dave and just something pulling at my heartstrings about this case, but it's hitting different. It's hitting different. And it's just, none of these cases are easy. None of them. There's just something about this one that makes me physically sick and that I just can't seem to get out of my mind. And I don't know what that is. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I need to take a break. Anyways, I appreciate you guys taking the time to catch up with me today and listen to this case and listen to Serenity's story. Please continue to have her entire family in your thoughts and prayers so that she can hopefully finally rest in peace, and so that these monsters who did this to her and inflicted this pain upon her can be held fully accountable and responsible for their actions, and that justice can be served. Because the absolute worst outcome possible here would be either them getting, a not guilty verdict, or getting a lesser sentence, and then having the ability to either continue to have children or reunite with the child they do have and inflict this pain on another child. So I really hope that the maximum punishment happens here, and that the jury finds them both guilty based on the evidence that they have, so that Serenity and her family can finally have some peace and some justice and begin to even try to heal. So please leave your supportive comments for them in the comment section below, and keep them in your thoughts and prayers, guys. All right, thanks so much for tuning in with me. I will keep you updated as soon as this does head to trial. All right, until the next one, stay safe.